Now we are going to turn to a new warning for tourists.
It's one of the largest supervolcanoes in the country, and
cracks spreading across the ground in Yellowstone National Park forced officials to make a decision that has not been taken lightly. The park, one of America's most treasured landscapes, was abruptly shut down after these fissures were discovered, raising alarms not only for visitors, but for scientists and policymakers who recognize the extraordinary sensitivity of this area. Yellowstone is far more than a recreational wonder. It sits atop one of the largest volcanic systems in the world, and any visible disturbance on the surface immediately prompts speculation, study, and concern. Closing it was an act rooted in caution, but the implications stretch across environmental, scientific, and social dimensions. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The discovery of these cracks was not merely an issue of cosmetic changes to the terrain. Yellowstone's geology is inherently dynamic, shaped by forces deep beneath the Earth's crust. Each fissure hints at stresses within the ground, pressures building in ways that could be linked to geothermal activity, tectonic shifts, or other subterranean processes. For a park that sits directly above a supervolcano, such findings carry weighty meaning. Park rangers and scientists have long monitored the area with seismographs, ground deformation sensors, and thermal imaging to detect changes. Yet seeing cracks visibly open in areas frequented by millions of visitors every year demands immediate action. The shutdown was not an overreaction, but an essential step to preserve safety while the situation is analyzed. This closure reminds the world of the delicate balance between natural wonder and latent danger that Yellowstone embodies. Geysers, hot springs, and mud pots captivate visitors, but they are all surface expressions of immense geothermal energy lying beneath. When cracks appear, they can alter the flow of heat and gases, shift the stability of trails, or even mark zones of instability where future eruptions of steam or water could suddenly occur. If left unchecked, these cracks might evolve into hazards capable of injuring or killing those nearby. The Park Service had no choice but to prioritize human safety, even as the closure disrupts tourism and regional economies dependent on Yellowstone's steady flow of visitors. Geologically, the cracks are a puzzle. Scientists understand that Yellowstone's crust is thinner than average because of the magma chamber beneath. Heat and pressure push upward, creating stresses that manifest as earthquakes, ground bulges, and thermal vents. Cracks can be symptomatic of that same restless energy. They may form when steam forces its way toward the surface, splitting rocks apart, or when the land subtly shifts under tectonic stress. The significance lies in whether these cracks are isolated surface features or part of a broader pattern of instability. If they align with larger faults, they could indicate that energy is concentrating in dangerous ways. That is why the closure is not just about stopping visitors from tripping or falling. It is about ensuring that researchers have the time and space to assess what is really happening beneath. The shutdown also illustrates how closely intertwined Yellowstone is with American identity. This park, established in 1872 as the first national park in the world, has become a symbol of both natural majesty and conservation ethics. To close its gates is to underscore how fragile that majesty really is. Families planning trips, photographers hoping to capture geyser eruptions, and wildlife enthusiasts eager to see bison herds are all temporarily cut off. The disappointment is palpable, but it carries a sobering reminder that Yellowstone is not a static museum, but a living, shifting system. Its beauty is inseparable from its volatility, and moments like this make that volatility impossible to ignore. The decision to close Yellowstone has ripple effects far beyond the immediate boundary of the park. Local communities in Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho rely on tourism for income, and an unexpected shutdown can impact hotels, restaurants, and guiding businesses overnight. The cracks are not just geological, they tear through economic expectations as well. Yet, this trade-off highlights the role of the National Park Service as guardian not only of landscapes but of human welfare. By acting decisively, they protect both the long-term sustainability of Yellowstone and the lives of those who would otherwise unknowingly walk across unstable ground. For scientists, the event presents an invaluable opportunity. Every crack tells a story about the pressures beneath, and mapping these fissures with precision can offer clues about the state of Yellowstone's volcanic system. Seismologists, volcanologists, and geologists will pore over the details, measuring crack lengths, analyzing soil displacement, and monitoring heat emissions. This closure, though disruptive, provides a rare chance to observe changes in real time without the interference of constant tourist activity. The data gathered now could inform predictions for years to come, improving models of Yellowstone's behavior and refining our ability to distinguish between harmless shifts and genuine warning signs. Beyond the science and the economy lies a deeper cultural layer. Yellowstone is not merely a park, it is a place that has inspired artists, writers, and visionaries for generations. Its closure due to visible cracks transforms it from a site of leisure into a symbol of natural power demanding respect. People around the country, even those who may never visit, follow the news with fascination. The thought of the ground splitting open in such a place conjures awe, fear, and curiosity in equal measure. It is a reminder that despite modern technology and comfort, humanity still lives at the mercy of Earth's forces. The cracks also invite reflection on how humans interact with unstable environments. Around the world, people build homes near volcanoes, ski slopes on avalanche-prone mountains, and resorts by hurricane-vulnerable coasts. Yellowstone's closure fits into that broader tension. We are drawn to beauty, even when it is dangerous. Closing the park is a rare act of restraint, an acknowledgement that there are times when stepping back is wiser than pushing forward. It forces us to confront our limits in managing nature. We may study it, monitor it, and prepare for it, but we cannot control it. The implications extend into the realm of emergency preparedness. The fact that Yellowstone could be closed so suddenly due to cracks demonstrates both the readiness of authorities to act and the unpredictability of the environment. Emergency protocols are tested in real time, communication channels activated to warn visitors, and evacuation strategies assessed. It becomes a living drill, sharpening the ability of agencies to respond to future hazards. In that sense, every closure, though costly and alarming, strengthens the resilience of both institutions and the public in facing natural threats. The timing of the discovery adds another dimension. Yellowstone is busiest in the summer months, when families flock to campgrounds, roads swell with traffic, and geyser basins are crowded with onlookers. A shutdown during this peak season has amplified consequences, magnifying the loss of revenue and the emotional impact on travelers, yet it also prevents the worst-case scenario of cracks widening beneath crowds. The visual of families scattering as the ground splits is one authorities aim to avoid at all costs. Acting preemptively, even if the cracks later prove benign, is far less damaging than waiting too long. One of the more intriguing aspects of the closure lies in how quickly speculation spreads whenever Yellowstone makes headlines. The word cracks immediately fuels talk of volcanic eruptions, supervolcanoes, and apocalyptic scenarios. While scientists caution against exaggeration, the public imagination leaps to extremes. This reveals the symbolic power of Yellowstone in global consciousness. Few places carry such immediate associations with catastrophic potential. The cracks may be minor surface features, yet they evoke an entire narrative of looming disaster. Managing that narrative becomes part of the challenge for officials and researchers who must balance transparency with reassurance. At the same time, the discovery emphasizes the constant motion of Earth beneath our feet. Yellowstone has experienced thousands of earthquakes, some strong enough to reshape its terrain. Ground deformation has been measured for decades, with land rising and falling like a slow breath. Cracks are simply another expression of that restless energy. They are part of a continuum, not necessarily heralds of doom. Still, their appearance at the surface where people walk, drive, and explore transforms them from abstract data points into immediate realities. That shift from the invisible to the visible forces everyone to pay attention. Closing the park gives space for reflection on what Yellowstone truly represents. It is not just a destination, but a window into Earth's geological processes on a grand scale. Every geyser eruption, every hot spring pool, every mud volcano is a message from the depths. The cracks are messages too, written in fractured stone instead of steam. To read them, scientists need time, and the public needs patience. The shutdown, frustrating though it may be, is part of that conversation between humans and planet. This event also challenges assumptions about permanence. Trails, roads, and visitor centers are built with the expectation of stability, yet the ground beneath is anything but stable. Cracks remind us that no human structure is immune to the forces of geology. roads may buckle, boardwalks may collapse, and campsites may shift. The closure underscores the humility required to manage a place like Yellowstone. It is not ours to command, but ours to steward, knowing that at any moment the land may change the rules of engagement. In the wider context of climate and environment, the shutdown ties into themes of uncertainty and vulnerability. While climate change is not the cause of these cracks, it has heightened awareness of Earth's volatility. People are already attuned to rising seas, shifting weather patterns, and melting glaciers. Adding Yellowstone's fissures to that backdrop amplifies a sense of living in unpredictable times. The closure resonates as part of a broader narrative about humanity navigating a planet that is never static, always changing in ways both subtle and dramatic. The discovery also highlights the importance of monitoring infrastructure. Yellowstone is one of the most studied volcanic systems in the world, yet even with advanced instruments, surprises arise. Cracks appearing without immediate warning reveal both the strengths and limits of science. We can detect earthquakes, track ground swelling, and measure heat, but predicting when and where cracks will surface remains elusive. That uncertainty reinforces the need for vigilance and adaptability. Closing the park is not just a reaction, it is an acknowledgement of those limits. For the millions who cherish Yellowstone, the shutdown is bittersweet. It denies access to the wonders they hope to see, but it also protects them from unseen dangers. It transforms the park, at least temporarily, into a space reserved for the Earth to express itself without human interference. That pause can deepen appreciation. When the gates reopen, visitors will walk more consciously, aware that the ground beneath them once cracked open and forced the world to stop and listen. The cracks themselves, depending on their extent, may or may not persist as lasting features. Erosion, vegetation, and time could soften their appearance, but the memory of the closure will linger. It becomes part of Yellowstone's story, one chapter in a long narrative of eruptions, quakes, and transformations. Each generation encounters the park differently, and this generation will remember the time when the ground split and the gates closed. It cements Yellowstone's identity as not only a park of beauty, but a park of power. The closure of Yellowstone after the discovery of cracks forces a reevaluation of how people understand the park's role, not just as a natural attraction, but as a vital part of Earth's geological heartbeat. While much has already been said about the immediate meaning of fissures, there is still a deeper story to tell about the park's history, the larger natural systems it connects to, and the lessons that can be drawn from such a dramatic development. The act of shutting down Yellowstone is not a one-dimensional event. It reverberates through scientific practice, environmental ethics, cultural imagination, and even philosophical thought about humanity's place on the planet. The very act of closing such an iconic park forces society to confront the fragility of access to natural wonders. Yellowstone is often thought of as an open sanctuary, a place where anyone with a car and curiosity can drive through valleys, gaze upon geysers, and encounter wildlife. That sense of openness feels almost permanent, as though the park were designed to be accessible in all seasons. Yet the suddenness of the closure demonstrates that access to these landscapes is never guaranteed. A fissure in the ground can halt decades of tradition in an instant, reminding us that permission to enter such sacred spaces is ultimately dictated by the Earth itself. The cracks are, in that sense, guardians at the gate, insisting that people step back until conditions are safe. To fully grasp the magnitude of this closure, one must recall the broader history of Yellowstone. Since its establishment in the late 19th century, the park has been the subject of wonder, study, and controversy. It was created during a period when America was seeking to define its national identity, and Yellowstone's steaming basins and vast landscapes became a symbol of untamed wilderness. Yet even then, early visitors and scientists noted the instability of the ground. Accounts from the 1800s describe geysers erupting unpredictably, pools changing colors, and the earth cracking under shifting conditions. The discovery of new fissures today, then, is not an anomaly, but part of a continuing story. Each generation meets Yellowstone anew, facing fresh reminders of its volatility. The closure becomes part of this living narrative, a marker of how the park evolves and how people adapt to its shifting moods. What makes the current cracks particularly compelling is how they interact with Yellowstone's role as a supervolcanic system. few locations on Earth hold such potential power. While the present cracks are not evidence of an imminent eruption, their mere appearance reignites discussions about the supervolcano lying beneath. The chamber of molten rock that fuels Yellowstone's geothermal features is vast, stretching for miles and containing enough material to reshape continents were it to erupt. This fact lingers in the background of every news story about cracks, making even small geological disturbances feel monumental. The closure thus taps into a collective subconscious fear about forces too large for human control, reminding the world that beneath the beauty lies extraordinary potential for destruction. At the same time, the cracks allow for a more nuanced conversation about Earth's processes. They demonstrate that landscapes are not static postcards, but dynamic systems. Trails carved out decades ago, boardwalks engineered for safety, and overlooks built for scenic views all assume a level of stability. Cracks shatter that assumption, forcing infrastructure to adapt to nature rather than the other way around. Engineers will now be tasked with examining whether paths must be rerouted, boardwalks replaced, or parking areas closed permanently. This adaptive process illustrates a fundamental truth. In environments like Yellowstone, human design must remain flexible, always secondary to the movements of the ground. The closure also forces reflection on the way humans measure time compared to geological scales. Visitors often think in terms of days or seasons, the length of a vacation, the annual cycle of park operations, the moment a geyser erupts. Cracks, however, belong to a deeper rhythm. They can mark stresses that have been building for centuries, slowly accumulating until one day they manifest in visible form. For scientists, each fissure is a clue in a long timeline stretching backward and forward across millennia. For visitors, the same fissure is a sudden and dramatic interruption. This collision of timescales, geological patience against human impatience, becomes tangible in the act of closing the park. The cracks also affect how Yellowstone is understood as an educational resource. School children learn about the park as a place where science comes alive, where geothermal features reveal Earth's inner workings. The shutdown becomes part of that curriculum, a living lesson in how scientific monitoring and public policy intersect. Teachers may use the closure to illustrate why geology matters not just in theory, but in practice. Students can see how a discovery beneath their feet alters the flow of tourism, government decisions, and scientific inquiry. In this sense, the cracks expand Yellowstone's role as a classroom, turning an inconvenience into a powerful teaching moment. The event also prompts consideration of how Yellowstone fits into global networks of natural hazards. Around the world, there are places where fissures appear, from Iceland's volcanic landscapes to East Africa's Rift Valley. Each region experiences cracks as a manifestation of tectonic or volcanic forces, and each responds differently. Yellowstone's closure connects it to this broader community of geological hotspots. Scientists can compare data across continents, learning from how other nations handle sudden fissures and what predictive models succeed elsewhere. This international perspective underscores that Yellowstone's challenges are not unique but part of Earth's shared restlessness. In addition to the scientific and global implications, there is a psychological dimension to the closure. Yellowstone occupies a mythic place in the American imagination. Families plan trips there as once-in-a-lifetime experiences, expecting to be awed by Old Faithful or stunned by the grand prismatic spring. The discovery of cracks interrupts that expectation, replacing wonder with anxiety. For many, the park's closure feels like a betrayal of the promise that Yellowstone will always be waiting, unchanged and accessible. That sense of betrayal can deepen public fascination, fueling speculation, storytelling, and even conspiracy theories. The cracks thus live not only in the ground, but in the imagination, reshaping how people talk about the park around dinner tables and in classrooms. The closure additionally highlights the relationship between technology and natural observation. Visitors often experience Yellowstone through the lens of cameras and smartphones, documenting every geyser and bison. Cracks, however, defy easy photography. They may look ordinary in pictures, mere lines in the ground, stripped of the drama they carry in context. Their significance lies not in their appearance, but in what they represent geologically. This disconnect reveals the limits of modern devices in capturing true meaning. It also elevates the role of scientists, whose instruments can detect what casual photography cannot. The shutdown, then, becomes a moment when the authority of direct human observation gives way to specialized tools and expertise. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Yellowstone shutting down after new cracks discovered? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.